the way Miracle started for me, I was sent a screenplay, a wonderful screenplay by a guy named Michael Petroni called Miracles. And at that point it was, well, it had always been owned by Spyglass and had been developed through Spyglass Entertainment. And I had not worked with Spyglass before, but when I received this feature script, my assumption was that this was a rewrite, that they wanted me to take this and somehow rewrite it and it would be made as a feature. So I read the script and it was one of those cases where I thought, well, I don't really know what they want me to do here because this is pretty wonderful as it is. And it was only later then through a conversation with my agent that he said, oh, no, no, no. This is going to be used as the basis. What they would like to do is create a 1-hour TV series, sort of a spiritual X-Files. And then I thought, well, that's interesting, but I'm still confused. I don't know what that is. So, but I better take the meeting, find out what's going on. So I went to the meeting and I brought with me to the meeting, and it was something I started doing right around that time. I would just bring something with me, sort of as a little good luck charm. And so what I brought was this book called The Physical Phenomena of Mysticism by Herbert Thurston, which I happen to have on my shelf. And what this is, kind of is what the show became. And that was not anything I knew, it's just sort of how it evolved. Herbert Thurston was an Anglican, I believe he was a minister, and during the 20s and 30s he investigated psychic phenomenon. And it was when spiritualism was still pretty popular in America, spiritualism being seances and contacting the dead through spirit mediums. And what he was trying to do was look at all psychic phenomenon in the context of what is actually a sign from God. What is actually a miracle, and what is something else. And that is what he did. And then when I went into this meeting with Megan Walpert and Suzanne Patmore, I started talking a little bit about that, and it led literally what I expected to be a 20-minute meeting turned into a 3-hour meeting, where ideas were flowing back and forth, and the show was born in that room on that day. This was March of 2001. And we got very excited about the idea that a character could come from a very strict theological background, and a character who was sort of raised to believe that if anything strange ever happens on earth, it is either a sign from God or a sign from the devil. And then suddenly be thrust into a world where strange things are happening that sort of cross those boundaries, and where you can't draw distinctions between good and bad because the phenomenon he's encountering has elements of both. And so what does that do to his belief system? And of course, it is destabilizing. And that's what makes the drama, and that's what makes it interesting and fun and scary, of course. So we talked about how we wanted to portray this, and we started talking about ideas like there would be sort of a haunting, for instance, or a poltergeist case in which furniture would get moved around in a room. But if it was viewed from the ceiling and like a photograph was taken, you would see that the furniture had been actually formed into letters from an ancient language that would contain a partial message. So we were trying to like mix and match this whole grab bag. There was also a case that I talked about in which a UFO researcher in New York actually had a sort of a support group of people who believed they had been abducted. And when he was talking to these people, he would hypnotically regress them, and he would tape record these sessions. And at a certain point, they would begin speaking in tongues. At least that's what he thought they were doing. And he thought, well, is there a religious connection here? And ultimately, what he found out is that they were speaking kind of a weird version of ancient Gaelic, which none of these people knew. But it connected up to Gaelic folklore about small green guys with wands living in the forest, except the small green guys with wands these people had dealt with were coming from the sky. So we were suddenly finding that all the folklore and the religion and the stuff you would see on documentaries about the paranormal, all these things could sort of find a nexus in this show, and it would open up the world, and we could do all kinds of stories. So that was very exciting to us. The second thing, and possibly the most important thing that came out of that meeting, was this can't be a show about the Catholic Church. This was being developed for ABC, and ABC was simply not interested in taking that on. They had done a show a few seasons earlier called Nothing Sacred, which was a very sort of on the face of it controversial show about the church. And real early on we thought, we're doing a show about the paranormal, and we like the fact that this character comes from a religious background, but it can't be about a Vatican conspiracy. Nobody wanted that, and ultimately that's territory that has been trod elsewhere, and we thought, well, let's do something else. So we wanted to start out there and end up over here. And that transition from religion to general paranormal was a huge challenge all the way through, because the questions kept coming back. Is this guy a priest? How do we explain he's not a priest? How do we explain that his points of view are not the points of view of the Catholic Church? So all those things had to be negotiated very carefully. And our other challenge with that is that the Catholic Church was very much in the news at the time that this was being developed, because there were many, many sex abuse scandals that were being covered literally every day in major newspapers across the country. At the exact same time, we were gearing up to sell a show whose pilot has priests and a Monsignor. And so again, is there danger here? Ultimately, we did not have any of that. I mean, the joke we, unfortunately tell is that we weren't on the air long enough to generate controversy. We would have loved controversy, but we flew so low under the radar that I don't think anyone had a chance to be offended or even construe a way to take offense. So, so those were all of the things that were being dealt with as the show was being developed. Now, when it came to casting, we had many, many ideas. Skeet Ulrich was one of the first ideas we had for Paul Callan, but at the time, we didn't think he was available. All the stories we had heard were that he had sort of stepped back from show business for a while. He was doing fine. He had plenty of dough in the bank. He was going to live in Virginia with his wife and his kids and, enjoy the good life for a while. So early on, we thought, okay, well, he's unattainable. So where else do we go? And we auditioned a lot of people. And it was during that process, and it was funny because, we had a lot of amazing people come in. We had Matthew Fox, who's now on Lost. Jason Priestley came in, which would have been an excellent casting pun. We had some really amazing people. Somewhere in this process, someone found out, oh, wait a second. Skeet got a hold of the script. His agents or managers had sent him a script, and he read it, and he actually really responded to it, and he's interested. So at that point, we thought, well, okay, let's give that a shot. And he flew out from Virginia, and we met with him, and pretty much instantly we thought, okay, this is great. We've got something here. And I remember talking to Matt, who had worked on, Matt Reeves, who directed the pilot, and he had worked on Felicity for 4 years at that point. So he had a ton of TV experience. And he said, what you're looking for, because I was sitting in casting sessions, I honestly didn't know. I was looking for someone who was reading those particular lines that I had written in the way I imagined. And at a certain point, he had to say, no, 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 that's not what you're doing. You want a movie star. You want someone who is going to be someone that visually, even if you can't hear them, people want to spend time with. So that's how you should look at all of these actors. And I remember when Skeet came in, and Matt was looking at him through a video camera, and Matt was so impressed with the way he was able to exude soulfulness and a sense of emotion and intelligence without speaking. And he said, okay, this is very, very important. So this is a guy we should get. So that was, again, a learning experience for me, and Matt's instinct was 1,000% correct. For the character of Alva Keel, which for those of you playing along at home, you will notice is partially the name of the author of the Mothman Prophecies. John Keel's middle name is Alva, so I decided as a sort of in a nod and in tribute to him, I would name this character after him, although they really don't bear much resemblance. We needed a mysterious figure, and we wanted someone who would sort of draw Paul away from the church and bring him into this strange world of paranormal investigation. And so originally, we were thinking of guys like Donald Sutherland. Guys who you look at and okay, something's going on here. But someone who was also more in the age range of Hector Elizondo. Someone who was, I'm leaving, one father and following another father figure. But we did a number of auditions, bringing in a whole range of people. And when we saw Angus, who exudes, again, without speaking, intensity, mystery, we thought, maybe the conception of this character and this group that he's joining is one of brotherhood. And so it's someone who is more of an age contemporary of Paul. And the two of them now, as brothers in a way, step into this world. And it's still a mentor figure, but it's not someone who is a generation